Now, where's this coming from? And again, I'm going to try and argue a slightly counter-intuitive case. There is a view that says this is occurring because Tony Blair is standing down. And because Tony Blair is standing down, his authority has weakened, slipping away from him. He can therefore no longer control his backbench. I was a friend of mine, the other weekend. He's got two kids, one of them about 10 and one about 8. And they were just getting to that point where they were not doing. He would tell them to do things and they just wouldn't do it. And it wouldn't be sort of mild subversion, they would just say no. And he turned to me at one point and said, I feel like Tony Blair. I'll become a lame duck dad. Now, I think this is true in all sorts of ways. Blair's authority is slipping away. You can see it. You can talk to anybody away. But that is not what is causing. That is not what is causing his current difficulties with his backbenchers. The first reason why that's so is if that was true, you'd expect to see no rebellion before Tony Blair said he was going, and then a very high level rebellion afterwards. That's not what's happened. What you've currently got has come straight off the back of an already historically high level of rebellion. Between 2001 and 2005, Labour MPs rebelled at the highest level in the post-war era. Rebellion over Iraq was the largest rebellion against the whip since the Corn Laws. And not minor stuff here, you've got to go back a fair way. Effectively, since before modern British party politics. Rebellion over the higher education bill, the second reading, was the largest at second reading in the post-war era, and so on. 259 Labour MPs rebelled. It was already historic high levels of rebellion. So what you've seen after 2005 is merely a continuation of what you were seeing before the election of 2005. In fact, and this, someone says, why don't you come out to Cambridge? You think, well, I'll do it, but I've got to promote my book, which is here, available all good bookshops and Waterstones. And in the book, which was published a week before the government went down to its first defeat, and which is called How Blair Misled His Majority. I can't, I wish I could see some sort of mystic names, but I suspect it was just luck, but never mind. In the book, in the final chapter, talk about issues which might cause the government trouble, and pointed out, this is a quote, still there, for example, are 56 of those who voted against the government's last Prevention of Terrorism bill, easily enough to defeat the government should they mishandle similar legislation now, even after the recent terrorist attacks. And that is, of course, exactly what happened. They did mishandle the legislation. They went down to defeat. And they go down to defeat, not because all these new rebels have suddenly appeared from nowhere, emboldened by Tony Blair's weakness, but because the same people that were rebelling before carried on rebelling. And you see that, actually, if you just look at who's rebelling. This is the second reason. Here's a list of the most rebellious Labour MPs. See how many of these are surprising names, those of you that know anything about the PLP. John McDonnell, Jeremy Corbyn, Lynn Jones, Bob Waring, Alan Simpson, Clare Short, Mark Fisher, Kelvin Hopkins, Bob Marshall Andrews, Glenda Jackson, Kate Hoey, Ian Gibson, Paul Flynn. I mean, it's in no way to demean what they're doing or to diminish it, to say that it's entirely predictable behaviour. You then have someone like Linda Reardon, who's new, but then Diane Abbott, David Taylor, Katie Clark, she's new, Mike Wood, Gordon Prentice, Gwyneth Dunwoody, Mick Clapham, Dennis Skinner, John Brogan. I mean, these are the same old, same old. And the correlation, those of you that are mathematically minded, between number of rebellious votes in the last Parliament and the number of rebellious votes now is 0.91. Now, in the real world, you don't get much better than 0.91, okay? Nothing is actually a correlation of 1, and in fact, if you ever found a correlation of 1, you'd know you've done something wrong. 0.91 or thereabouts is about all you'll ever get in the real world. It's perfect. Two other examples of the sort of reality of what's going on, which I think gets overlooked. Let's take the smoking ban, which came into that. Ignore what you think about the smoking ban. Whether you think the smoking ban is good or bad, infringement of civil liberties or not. The fact is, with the smoking ban, that the exact opposite policy was in Labour's manifesto. Labour was elected in May 2005, quite explicitly saying that any bar which did not serve food or any private club, it would be up to them to decide whether or not they stayed smoking, non-smoking. That was an explicit policy pledge in the manifesto, and that's what the government tried to push through. In the face of backbench resistance, they realise they cannot get this through. There's going to be an enormous backbench rebellion, so they allow a free vote. Now that in itself strikes me as amazing. I cannot think, again, if anyone can, let me know, I cannot think of any occasion in the post-war era in which a government elected with a workable majority has within a year abandoned a bit of its manifesto in the face of backbench opposition. I can't think of a single example. Then, when the vote takes place, how many Labour MPs do you think vote for the manifesto? And the answer is just 9%. 9% go into the manifesto lobbying, 91% go into a policy exactly the opposite of what they stood on a year ago. And the 91% include the Prime Minister and the Chancellor.